I tend to think that all of us on this call are looking for something more idealistic than just a high-paying salary. Maybe we're looking for both high pay and doing something meaningful, whichever the case, considering most of us spend a large portion of our life involved in our career. It would be good if your choice of career served your why. You want to help others. Your why is a means to improving not only your own life, but also the life of others. So ask yourself how your personal mission statement can help you be a better leader for your team, a more caring provider for your family, a more engaged citizen in your community. Your why should be able to touch every corner of your life, and by extension, every person in your life. Recalibrate regularly. It may prove difficult to find how to fully live your why in the beginning. And there are things that will derail or distract you from your sense of purpose. To live your why to the fullest, create daily habits to remind you of your why, and an upbeat playlist of self-help podcasts or reading to your morning routine. Know what you can do during the day to ensure you are staying on track with your purpose. When you find yourself off track, don't berate, belittle, or chastise yourself. Simply redirect, refocus, and get back on track. Revise your why when necessary. Alan Sanders said, "Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans." Real life throws a lot of curveballs. If your plan is to only swing at fastballs and the only thing coming, my why. So you see the little man in this picture? This little man is my grandson, who I'm over the moon about. But when I started selling digital media, the strongest part of my why was to put my immediate family first, my husband and our newborn son. I needed to contribute to our family needs, but I wasn't willing to give up the ability to put my immediate and extended family first. I wanted to be the one taking care of our son day in and day out, to be able to serve in our son's school, in our church, in our community. And I didn't want to have to explain or ask permission from anyone to take the day off to go to players. Our son's an adult now, and though still a top priority, his needs are different and don't really affect my days the way they did when he was growing up. However, I did get a couple of those curveballs I mentioned before. I had to recalibrate, and I now dedicate time focus to an 88-year-old aging mother who lives by herself, and my youngest sister battling her third round of cancer. I was determined to make it work when I started. I started in 1998 with a small publisher called Meridian, or 1999, with a small publisher called Meridian Magazine, and just sold simple display ads and email ads. But when I started, I had no idea what I was doing. I couldn't wait to build my commissions. And so sometimes I'd work from 8 p.m. to 1 or 2 a.m. and the others from 3 to 4 a.m. to 8 to 9 a.m. You guys have probably heard these commercials on TV. They advertise a hair growth product or something, and then they say, call 1-800, operators are standing by. Well, I was one of those 1-800 operators, and that's why I worked late into the night and into the morning hours. And during the day, I'd find time to do my calls. I'd do emails and proposals when my husband came home from work to be with our son. And about 9 months into this, the editor of Meridian Magazine, who I was working with, came to me and said, it's time to quit that other job and fully focus here. My commissions weren't where we needed them to be, but my husband and I discussed it and decided to take a leap of faith, and so I quit the opportunity afforded me by Meridian Magazine, which was my first digital media gig, and now with iMedia, has always allowed me to reflect my why in my daily life, and I'm so grateful for that. It has allowed me to be much happier in my life. And so I'm grateful for that first opportunity, and I'm appreciative of the opportunity Josh offers me and all of the rest of us through iMedia. You need to figure out your why. knowing why you are doing what you are doing will inspire and motivate you. If I get up in the morning and really just don't feel like working, I have this little thing I say to myself. I say, don't screw up a good thing. And then I kind of laugh because it's kind of goofy. But this has been a good thing. And I've always been surrounded by amazing people who motivate and inspire and help me. My dad, who passed 19 years ago, was a tremendous influence on my life. And although he started with other jobs, his career turned out to be selling cars, and he was very successful. He was most often the top salesperson at the dealership. Growing up, when I'd come upstairs from my bedroom, the air was filled with the sounds of the topics of these records would be to all of us kids throughout our lives. But it turns out that experts say that the first hour of the day is really important. To this day, I still spend time, the first 30-ish minutes of my day, doing what I think sets the tone for my whole day. I'm religious, and I start my day by listening to a 10 to 15-minute talk from one of my church leaders. And then I read or listen to something that is positive, motivating, uplifting, or educational. I don't tend to be a super early morning person. So for me, this schedule starts as early as 6, as late as 7. If I do wake up early, I complete my routine and I head over to the gym for a morning workout, making it back to my desk in time for our morning huddle. In the bookcase, in the graphic you're seeing that Avery so cleverly created, are some of the books I've read all of or a portion of or listened to. And I go back to them sometime, from time to time, to be reminded of really good and things that inspire me. There are also multiple podcasts I listen to. I like the Quote of the Day show, the Ed Milet show, Tony Robbins, Tiny Leaps, Big Changes, Too Small for This, The Art of Charm, and Make It Happen Mondays. So, question, what inspires you? Do you prefer to listen or to read? It doesn't really matter. Just figure it out and work it into your daily routine. Look until you find something that speaks to you, motivates you, something that you really connect with, something that you connect with it so much that you remember it, and in your mind you go back to it. And when you have a tough day, you remember some of those things that you heard and things that help you. Have a morning routine that sets you up for a healthy, happy, productive day. So one of the things I was asked to do was kind of talk about a typical day in my life. So once I hit my desk, usually the first thing I do is I spend 5 to 10 minutes reading or honing up on a sales skill or educational for the products or what's going on in the industry. I've shared some of the Burrell podcasts or articles with you that I think are good. I may listen to one of Josh's training videos or read through one of our product descriptions, but I always do something that specifically helps me with what I'm going to be doing the next 5 to 8 hours or however many hours I'm going to be working that day. The next thing I do is I make sure any commitments I've made are fulfilled. If I've got commitments that need to go out that day, I make sure they're done. Calls, emails, proposals. You don't want this to take much time because you want to get into your calls by around 9 a.m. I try really hard to finish anything I start in one day. It's an email, a proposal, an outreach to a client. I feel like my time is more productive when I don't have to keep coming back to something to finish it up. So if it's reasonable, I just get it done in one touch. And these tasks happen early before prospecting hours or the last thing at the end of the day before their due dates. Next is prospecting. I'm going to tell you, I think prospecting is hard. Now, Josh loves prospecting. He thinks the proposals and the follow-up is harder. I'm just the opposite. As many years as I've done it, I can still have a bit of a mental block about it. The first call of the day is hardest, and I have a goal to make my first prospecting call no later than 10 a.m. every morning. And I usually try to start prospecting by 9, but if for some reason I don't and 10 o'clock hits, I've got a little reminder saying, get your prospecting started. The funny thing is, once I make that first call, prospecting becomes a non-issue. I'm ready to call anyone after that. I've just never gotten past that. I know it, so I have a plan to not let it stop me. It's more challenging, and do that first thing. When you are in prospecting hours, prospect first. Also, remember that meeting with clients, daily huddles, and our team meetings are important. Having said that, be careful not to confuse being busy with selling. Selling is prospecting, digital evaluations, and meetings where you're continually closing and upselling. And when I get to my desk, I can just get started to work an accomplishment. Now, this is a really good plan for me, and it works when I follow it. I am very productive. Your plan will likely look different, and you want to take the time to make a plan and use it and then follow it when you need to tweak it. So create a plan that works for you. Don't try to follow someone else's plan. You want to, this is the pattern for success. I always think of this as this is where the rubber hits the road. These numbers are based off industry averages. You should be tracking your progress. The numbers that count are the proposals reviewed because they lead to closed sales. If you work backwards, how many calls do you need to make to get 3 proposals out a day? Is your close rate, confidence, and your skills will grow, and that will improve your close ratio. So you won't have to make as many dials to make as many closes. I know we focus on follow-ups on Fridays. I still make calls on Fridays, and that's why it's reflected in the chart you are seeing. When I follow my daily routine, I don't have an awful lot of follow-ups on Friday because I do them mostly at the end of my day. And after my B&I meeting, to go pull doors, a salesperson that was just really successful stopped me, and he said, Sharon, when you've decided you're done for the day, pull one more door or make one more phone call. And over the years, some of my best clients have come from that one more door or that one more call. And I remember I'd always think I was done about 4:30 so I could get back to the office by 5. But if I pull one more door, maybe somebody at one of those training sessions, we were told to think of a no as one step closer to a yes. And I've always remembered that, and it helps me focusing on moving forward and not feeling bad that the last individual or the last 10 individuals I've spoken to have said no. So the next slide gives me a laugh, but it's just a good graphic, okay? So I just think it displays enough. It's what generated commissions, okay? So you look at that and you go, wow, how am I ever going to make any money doing that? Well, let me show you the results, okay? So you do that, okay, so let's run back up here. You do that based on these numbers, okay, which are attainable. Here are the results the first year, okay? Here are the results the second year. If you do this just every day, day in and day out, okay? And it all came from this. It all came from that one little sliver of green. And it's absolutely doable. You guys, it is absolutely doable. Goals. It's really important to set goals and have goals. I want to make 100,000 this year, which my goal is much higher than that. But just for rounding numbers, let's say I want to make 100,000 this year. That's an average of 8,400 monthly or 2,100 weekly. So you need to figure out how many calls you have to make to close that much business. Now remember, what I sell this month, I continue to get paid on as long as the client stays with us. So engineer the activity needed to reach your goals. You need to break them down into daily, weekly, and monthly activity. And make sure they're visible and trackable. Look at them often. Calibrate where you are in comparison to where you want to be. And do that on a regular basis. your activity needs to be things that move the needle. So you have to make the calls, but your activity has to generate meetings and proposals, exactly what I needed to do. And I would encourage you guys to do that, so that you know where you are and where you need to improve. And if you find that your numbers are way out of whack somewhere, that it just doesn't make sense to you, then again, that's where you reach out to one of your mentors. You can't do it based on anybody else's numbers. If I call a dozen people a day at this point in time, I can keep my pipeline full. I didn't ask Josh this, and maybe 10 later down the road, but consistently knowing what it took to get to where you are today gives you the needed information to know what it will take you to get to where you want to be. So know what your goals are, track them on a regular basis, review and update them as needed. We're getting through that. I guess I'm talking fast because we're getting through this faster than I thought we would. A few years ago, I was introduced to this theory, the results obtained with just a 1% improvement day after day. And I'm going to read this quote because I think it's just phenomenal. 1% a day compounded over time doubles in 72 days. After a year, you have over 37 times more. So how does this apply to us? As you get the hang of things, you improve your skills and your knowledge, and those 1% gains will increase to 2%, 3%, or even more. I'm inviting you to commit to work the process until you prove it for yourself. We talk to you, we tell you how many calls to make and what those calls, and again, remember that when I say calls, I'm also talking, but you need to commit to the process until you prove it to yourself. And in the meantime, all of the little gains that you're doing while you're proving it to yourself will add up to something really substantial. Once you've proved it to yourself, it'll be a lot easier to work the process and see those gains multiply. Success is exponential. Once you get off the runway, you climb quickly to a cruising altitude. But the hardest, and the other thing I would invite you to do is think of 1 or 2 or 3, however many things you think you can handle to intentionally work on improving at least 1%, either daily or over a week, and then track those things and see how well you're doing with that. You guys, I promise you, it will make a difference. It will absolutely make a difference. When I haven't been working as hard as I should, and I switched to what I think of as an employer mindset, and I kind of evaluate my performance. Not kind of, I do. I evaluate my performance. I actually write it down like a performance review, and then I make a goal to get back on track. And there was a time when I first started to do this that I was pretty hard on myself. And over the years, I've decided that's not the right way to do it. Just like we talked about before, don't belittle or berate yourself this morning and try to work my plan and work really hard at that. If you work this job like you have a boss that expects you to do your best every day, and you do give it your best every day, the blueprint will take you to success. And once you figure out your why you're doing this, and what your routine should look like, and you learn to hold yourself accountable, you will see forward momentum. You need to internalize. I have many times during my sales years would put a stack of pennies on my desk, and that represented the number of calls I wanted to make that day. If I would have financial goals, I would back into those financial goals by reverse engineering my goals. And then I knew how many calls I had to make to get appointments, to get the closes. And the first thing I kind of focused on was just filling my pipeline. If I wanted to hit 45 calls that day, there were 45 pennies on my desk. And for every call I made, I put a penny in a jar and would keep an eye on the stack still on my desk. And then recently, when Josh started talking rather than tonnage, but I do try very hard to run my day in a way that I can hit my goals every day. I think it was Dan Sullivan that said, when you track your progress, you progress faster. And I really believe that to be true. As I look at the pennies on my desk, I think, okay, I need to make this a priority, and maybe this can wait while I get these prospecting calls out, and then something else can wait until later in the day when it's not good prospecting time. Bottom determines how much you're willing to do, and your attitude determines how well you will do it. I do like the quote, considering that you can work on all the attributes referred to. There are things that you can do to improve your talent. There are things you can do to improve motivation in your life and to improve your attitude. And with the internet, we have so many resources at our hand. It's so easy to look. That's it. And I have finished early, so I hope that's okay. We appreciate your time, and but based on our schedule, we've got about 40 minutes for questions. We don't want to. We'll use that if we have good questions. I hope that I've said something that's inspired you to really understand your why, to apply your life lessons to our craft, to set routines and goals that will drive success if you commit yourself to them. Remember, the blueprint works if you work it. And then just a quick thank you to Josh for providing lunch for the Active iMedia team members. And with that, let's just open the remaining time for questions. So I think, Avery, you're going to open that up, and we'll see what any questions that there are.
Thank you so much, Sharon.
You're welcome. Any feedback or questions or anything anyone wants to share that they find extremely motivational and helpful?
Sharon, can you talk a little bit more about, when you weren't getting $10,000 checks and what that was like?
At the point that so it was really interesting. When I first started with Josh, my commissions went down initially. I mentioned I worked with Meridian Magazine, and then one of the founders of Ancestry.com called me and asked me to start an ad network with him. And interestingly enough, he paid me a salary plus commission. But then when he sold the assets to Josh, I went back to a straight commission, although Josh paid me a little bit for a few months while with one of the clients we had, I won a sales contest. And I'm not sure this is what you want me to tell him, Josh, but it was just so exciting. I won this sales contest, and I'd won sales contests before, but this one, they had defined how much I could spend on airfare, hotel, and then just miscellaneous money. And I remember looking at the hotel and thinking, there's no way in the world I can spend that much on a hotel in 3 nights. And my husband came home from work one night, and he goes, I know where we're going to stay and spend that money. And I said, okay. And he said, we're going to stay in Trump Tower. And it was pretty funny that we stayed in Trump Tower, and it was fun. And we had some fun experiences because of it, and some funny ones. But it was so motivating to say, look what I did. I mean, look what I did. I worked hard enough and made enough calls and got enough appointments that I got these big deals that now I still feel really motivated about that. I mean, and I still am making good checks. And we've been to Europe several times since and done other things that we wanted to do. That money over and above the basic has allowed us to do. One of the big things that's allowed us to do ties back into my why, and that is that if I don't work, I mean, there are weeks I only work 25 or 30 hours because I spend I spend every Wednesday afternoon and evening with my mother, and when my sister needs help, I drop what I'm doing and I go take care of my sister. And so the ability to work really hard when I'm at my desk and really focus and not get sidetracked has allowed me to make really good checks, and it's allowed me to do for others, and mostly it's allowed me to meet that why of putting my family first, which really is that's the core of my why, because it's the core of my belief that my family comes first. So you guys, you can do it. You just have to make those calls. And I don't care if you go through a week and you get not one phone call, or you don't get one meeting set up. The next week, then maybe you'll get 10 or 15. It is a numbers game. It really is a numbers game. And if you want if you want more meetings, then you make more dials, you pull more doors, you talk to more people, you'll get more meetings, you'll get more presentations, you'll get more closes.
There might be other questions, Sharon. That's great. But I loved what you said about thinking about yourself like your own employee. We are all our own boss, as it were. Can you tell maybe the pros and cons of thinking about this like your own company and like being your own boss? I mean, sometimes I think I'd be the worst employee in the world. So any thoughts on that? I love that.
When I first kind of started doing that, I was really bad in that I would really berate myself when I hadn't done it well. You know, when I hadn't put in a good week, I'd really kind of tear myself apart, and I don't know what happened. I don't remember what happened to change that, but I found that when I just said, okay, I didn't do it well, starting tomorrow, I'm going to get back on plan and I'm going to do it right. It made a big difference. But I don't know that there were any real big negatives with it, because for me, it really just taught me to be more accountable. I know I had to teach family and friends that, even because when I started doing this, it was not common for people to work at home, okay? Because this was 25 years ago. So I had to teach family and friends that when I was home during the day, I was working, you know? And so, you know, in my church, it's common that when somebody passes away, we all make a lunch and we go over and we set up and we serve a nice luncheon and everything afterwards. And I had the women in my church that I could donate a dish, but I couldn't come over and spend 3 hours helping with the funeral, because I live in an area where there were a lot of elderly people and we would have a funeral every week, and I couldn't do that. At that point in time, any time that I took out of my sales day was focused on my son, or doing things for him, going to his school or whatever. It was focused on him. And then, like I said, later it changed to my mom and my sister. But I don't know, Josh, if there were some negatives, it's been so long, I don't remember. Now I remember it as it's like I said, it's kind of silly, but it kind of makes me think now, if I were a boss, was my day acceptable to my boss?
No,
So
thanks,
that's
Sharon.
how I think about it.
Well, if there aren't any other questions, Avery, did you want to ask anything, or did anyone else want to ask anything? Maybe one final. Gina's got a question, and then there was one question about have you owned any other businesses, and then maybe if you've owned any other businesses, let's let Gina talk, and then let's just have you wrap it up, Sharon, unless Avery or has anything else to finalize.
No, hi everybody. I just wanted to say this was great. I feel like I need to definitely turn it up a notch or two or three. So, you said you make 40 calls sometimes a day?
I don't so much now, but there was a time I made 40 calls a day. You bet. And that's what it took. You know, Josh said your $10,000 checks, that's what it took to get there. And when I got that first check like that, I was making 35 to 40 calls a day. And they were good calls. I was not blowing, this is going to be a close. And when it wasn't, I just said, okay, the next one will be.
Okay, that's great, and I get it loud and clear. So I thank you for this. I do. Thank you.
Okay, owned other businesses. When I worked for Meridian Magazine, it was basically my own thing. I was still a 1099. They had never done advertising, and so like Josh said, I knew absolutely nothing about it then. Did that on my own. And a few years before that, I had a friend, and we had started a little company called The Fit. It didn't really go anywhere. We got to the point where we were making modest exercise wear for women to wear to gyms that didn't want to be quite so exposed as a lot of what the other people had out there. We bought a couple sergers and we created our own pad at it. And then when I got married, my husband put an end to that because he hates those. So he was more important than they were to me.
Well, excellent.
Well, this was great, Sharon. Thank you so much. If anyone else has any other questions, feel free to jump in. But thank you all for attending. Thanks for being here. Thanks for contributing. Sharon, if you could just go to the next slide, just one more forward.
Okay.
So we want to give a quick teaser for the next Masterclass, which will be coming in a couple months. We're going to be talking about product mastery. So we're super excited for that. Really learning the products, getting really good at evaluating prospects with the specific products, and then getting really, really good at closing. So thank y'all for being here today, and enjoy your lunch if you haven't had it yet. But yeah, go out and fill out that goal worksheet and use that motivation that you have now, and go make some great stuff happen.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.